so a pre-Shabbat Shalom to everyone. We are in the process of preparing for Shabbat, most of us. And as I was preparing and getting ready to run some errands, something that was applicable came to mind in the process. And I thought, you know what, why not share it? Because somebody else could benefit from this. So for those of you who don't know who I am and know anything about me personally, I have 2 girls, and they are 3 and 5. They'll be 4 and 5 in a couple of days. 4 and 6 in a couple of days. And I am home full time with them now for the time being. And we homeschool. So we school Sunday through Thursday because Friday we have preparation for the Shabbat. So we get prepared and we have things that we do. And so trying to school on a Gregorian school week didn't necessarily work out for the function of a Hebraic home. So we made that adjustment. And so we start schooling on Sunday, which is technically the first day of the week. And then what we do is we move into, we go through our week, and then Thursday would be our Friday. And then the Gregorian Friday is when we do preparation. And so we have a little routine that we do every Friday. So every Friday we get up. The kids get, they brush their teeth, they wash their face, I make them breakfast. And then we go over literally what day is it. So today is Friday. So what do? We prepare for the Shabbat. So the kids know I have a basic schedule and menu. Every Shabbat it's the same. We do muffins, bananas, and sometimes smoothies for breakfast on the Shabbat. And then whatever we have for dinner, I make enough for leftovers, and that's what we have for lunch for Shabbat, unless we potluck, and I still bring my leftovers as the meal to the potluck with the rest of our group. And then by the time we leave potluck, pretty much Shabbat's over here in California. It's sundown, and we pretty much still just chill. People probably come out to the house. So that's how our basic schedule works. It's not a bunch of a bunch of stuff. So what we do on Friday night is we eat together. And so during the day on Friday, the children have tasks. And so what we do is the children are responsible for their room. And the whole purpose of this, you saw it, this is raising children in Torah, is there are 2 functions in instructing and creating a functional system with children, whether you work or not, whether you homeschool or not, whether you stay at home or not, because I've been on every side of that fence. And there are 2 things that must function, that you must have implemented. One is chastisement, and the other is teaching. Chastisement and teaching. And so, I know somebody's going to say this because I am moving, but I'm going to show you this book. When I leave home is when I start my videos, just so people aren't like, oh my gosh, she's so dangerous. When I leave home, I have a country road before I even can get to an actual regular city road. And so it's most of the time just me on the road. Okay, so if you don't have a wise woman builds her house, this is where these words and these definitions come from. And you can obviously dig deeper into them, as I have done. But they're in here. They're in here. So we're going to cover a couple of these words today. As we do this little talk. And I think chastisement is on page 87, and then the idea of teach is on page, good question. I'll stop and I'll look it up so I'm not flipping, even though I am on a country road. I am still driving. Anyway, so one of the issues that we have, especially as a westernized people, we've been westernized, we're trying to recondition our minds to think Hebraically. One of the issues that has happened during our captivity is abuse. Abuse is a very, very big issue, and it's an issue that has been passed down. Many of us, some of us have, but many of us have not actually received proper discipline. Most of it has been in the form of abuse, in frustration, in anger, and in just, it comes from the wrong place. And but because somebody does something wrong or does not know how to do it, does not mean that you throw out the whole system of discipline. And so discipline comes in a bunch of different ways. And Torah gives us several different ways and several different words for discipline. Because you have some people who lean all the way toward purely corporal punishment. And then you have some people who are completely against corporal punishment, and they believe in redirecting. And while neither person is wrong, when you choose only one side, you put yourself against Torah, and then you put yourself in a position to potentially become, or create an imbalance within your child. Discipline is both physical and redirecting, okay? And that's based on Torah. In church, and in a lot of Christian church is a European, Christianity is a European westernized religion. It's not a Hebraic religion or Hebraic culture. And so the things that are instituted into Christianity come from or originate from a European way of dealing with things. And what happened in Christianity is that we ended up with a bunch of like terms that don't necessarily fit Hebraically. For instance, all of you have heard this slogan, spare the rod, spoil the child, right? Everybody's heard it, but it doesn't exist in Torah. There's no verse in Torah that says spare the rod, spoil the child. There's two verses that do exist in Torah, and two that are very, very aggressive. And I'm going to say them because I think that it's necessary that these are brought to a head. And then once I tell what these are, we're going to define how Yah sees this discipline and how it's not abuse. Okay? The first one is, and I think they're both from Proverbs. I'm driving, so I do not have like my notes up, but I'll tell you how they're said. The first one says, if you do not discipline your child, you hate your child. Do not discipline your child, you hate them. It's very, very strong language, okay? The second one is the rod of correction. This is physical, drives foolishness from the heart of a child, okay? It's very simple. So the idea that we have seen it as just spoiling, and you don't see it as actually hate, that's when it becomes different, because you have parents who do not discipline their children. And when I mean discipline, I don't mean like you abuse your children. So I don't want anybody to walk away with this idea that I'm talking about abuse. What I'm talking about is children, a lot of people's children are disrespectful. And I'm talking about from small to older children. Children, now there's a difference between being a child and being disrespectful. And when, as a people, as a Hebraic people, whose culture and whose laws tell us to honor our parents, when we have disrespectful children, we are allowing our children to break Torah. And disrespect is different at every age, of course, right? So what's disrespectful at 2, because you can be disrespectful at 2, is different from disrespect at 10, but it's all disrespect. So this week, and I'll use the example, and I'll get to how this even started with our Shabbat preparation. So this week, we have tightened up on disrespect, because disrespect shows up small first. It's very small. And as parents, our job is to ra'ah, or to watch, or to carefully watch the body of our children. We're supposed to ra'ah, to watch them, and we're supposed to know them, anah, which means to literally like focus and watch the things that they do. And so this one slipped by me. I'm going to be honest. It did. Maybe I was ignoring it because it wasn't like a big deal because my kid's 5. But every time I would tell my 5-year-old to do something, I would get, her eyes would do this. And I'm like, so this week, it was really last week, but this week is when I really, really was like, this is not going to happen anymore. No more. So this week, I asked her to do something, and it was just as her head was turning. Like, her head would turn, she'd go. And it wasn't like a hard roll, but I could see it creeping in, and I'm like, and it would be something as simple as like, Jay, go brush your teeth. And she'd go. Or, didn't I say such? Like, and I'm like, okay. So, behavior then does not start when it's fully conceived. Obviously, that thing has shown up. So, you know, I'm like, okay, first I'm going to start with me. Like, do I do that? Like, if my husband asks me to do something, do I go? And I'm like, so I'm like, hey, Yosh, like, when you ask me to do stuff, do I do the weird eye thing like Jade? He was like, what? And I was like, no, like, for real. And he's like, no. And I was like, yeah, because my mom, awesome mom, but mom was a young mom. That was a slap. Like, if she asked you to do something and you did that, all you would feel was when your head turned, it would be meeting a full 5 fingers. So, the next thing was, I was like, okay, so what is my kid watching? Because I'm like, once again, when it comes to what the kids watch, pretty on it. And so I'm like, only thing like immediately the show popped to my head. So it must have been something that I probably was like, maybe it's not a big deal. So the show, Jessie, right? And you have like this little girl, and she's a little brown girl on the show, and her name is Zuri. And she is haughty. By biblical definition, she has a very sassy attitude. And so I was watching it, I watch her, and I'm like, oh. So immediately, you can't watch that show ever again. And then I like literally like went through their iPad, because we don't have television, and like cut down what was even like, what I just went through everything again. Like, you know, sometimes you get lax and you're like, let me go back through here and see what's actually being viewed. But literally, how I had to stop that, I could not stop it by just talking to her, because the sin had conceived. The seed had went into her heart, and now she was doing it without even noticing it. So it didn't matter what I said. I could say, hey, Jay, can you give me my phone? She'd be like, and I'm like, okay, all right, cool. So I warned her, which is fair, right? And we'll get to this script. I warned her. I said, now, Jay, you're doing this thing. And she's like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, no, you really are doing this thing every time I ask you to do something. So I really need you to check your disposition. You need to check your heart. This is literally how I'm talking to my 5-year-old. That's how I talk to my kids. I need you to check your heart. I need to check the disposition of your heart and why you feel like that when I ask you to do things. Like, does it bother you when I ask you to do things? And she's like, well, no, which is a yes. And I'm like, okay. So I gotta give it the rundown. You don't have a job. You don't do anything. You don't have any worries. You can't have an attitude. You don't do anything. Your job is to be a kid, and kids are supposed to be happy. In my home, kids are supposed to be happy because I am here, literally, home with you, ensuring your happiness. Like, literally. Like, I'm playing games. I'm preparing curriculum. I'm making things fun. I'm doing science experiments. I need you to be happy. You have absolutely nothing to be happy, sad about. Anyways, so literally what happened was I gave her a warning, and then the next time she did it, I explained to her what she was doing. And so by the end of that day, she had done it like 5 times. And I warned her, I explained to her behavior, so I gave her this verbal. And then after that, the last one, which came with full attitude, I spanked her. I did. And it was not until then that literally, after the spanking, have this conversation. You understand why. This is what you were doing. I warned you this many times. This is the behavior. This is why it's unacceptable. Blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole 9. Like, explain it to the child. And literally, that morning when she got up, This is funny. It's not funny. I didn't laugh at her, but it's funny now explaining it. I kept seeing her go, I would say something or she'd talk to me, then she'd go, and she'd cover her eyes and shake her head. I'm like, what? She's like, I'm getting ready to do that thing again and I just don't want to do it. So she then, something about the correction made her, the physical correction made her attach her negative behavior to the consequence of the negative behavior, and then she began to monitor the behavior herself. That is what correction is supposed to do from a Hebraic sense. Okay, so I'm going to give you these words really quick. And if you have this book, it's on page 87. It's study number 24. And it says, Proverbs 13:24 says, he that spareth his rod hateth his son or his child, but he that loveth in him chasten him betimes. It means like it is something that happens in their existence. So the word yasar, yod samek resh, means to correct, to make a change in the direction through correction, turning of the head of a child or student, punish, instruct, set limits or restraints. So there's another verse, and it is Leviticus 26:23-24, and it says, if ye will not be reformed by me by these things, but will walk contrary unto me, then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. So this is the master talking, saying, okay, look, if you won't be reformed, which means that I have corrected, I've tried to change your direction, I've turned your head into the right way, I've punished you, I've instructed you, and I've set limits. If this has not worked, then I'm going to have to be contrary to you, which means that I'm going to now have to withhold things from you so that you understand. So this idea of parenting Hebraically in Torah is we have to stop giving our kids things when they don't deserve them. And sometimes it does affect the whole family. I know sometimes it's hard when you have more than one kid or more than 2 children, or, you have 7 children. And when one child does something, you're like, okay, I was raised with the whole, like, one monkey don't stop no show. But as a nation, what we have to understand is one monkey can stop a whole show. One person walking and operating in disobedience can destroy it for everyone. And so what happens is it forces us to hold ourselves accountable and each other accountable when one monkey stops the show. And what we do in our home is we can be about to, like, literally, we can be in the process of, like, getting ready to do something, like, okay, let's go ride bikes. And, like, if one of the kids, and we're not, like, tyrants, so it has to be something that's like, okay, we've had to, come on, get up, brush your teeth, and you're sitting there and you turned on YouTube and you're watching a cartoon, and I ask you, and I'm like, hey, we're going to do this today, it's going to be really fun, and you, okay, so then guess what? We're not going. So then, yes, everybody's affected, because sometimes I really want to go, and sometimes the kids really want to go, and it's like a thing, right? One monkey does stop the whole show in our house, because everyone needs to understand that when you do something, it affects everyone around you. Parenting in Torah makes us remove the individuality, even if you have an only child, even if you do. Because, one, they're growing up singular, some of our children who don't have community, and they don't see how their behavior affects people around them. Okay? So, it does stop the show. The word yasar obviously means to redirect. So this process of redirection is first. We first want to always redirect our children before we commence to corporal punishment. When we redirect, though, we have to redirect with the expectation of a change in behavior and attitude. So once a child has been redirected, the expectation after the redirection is for the change in attitude and in behavior. If the attitude and the behavior does not change, and that doesn't mean to stop for 2 seconds, if it does not change, then we have to move on to what's next after that, okay? So, yeah. Okay, so after that is the word, it's the word, the next word is yacha. And it literally means to chastise or to correct with a firm hand. So after you've done the redirecting, And after you've instructed, re-instructed, tried to reform, right, the child, then the next thing is the firm hand. The reason why is because the definition means to reprove, rebuke, plead, reason, and admonish. So it's Proverbs 3:12. It says, "For whom Yahuwah loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delight." I played sports, so I have a lot of experience with physical punishment, if you want to put it like that. And I'm going to get to this. I don't think this works for everybody, but it works for some people. And I believe it definitely works for our children. When you did something incorrect in sports, you were then made accountable for that. And you were reproved or admonished, and you were corrected. And the physical punishment of it was there had to be something that physically afflicted your body to cause you not to make that same mistake. So I remember running suicides till I threw up, because when we shot free throws, the expectation was you make 80% of your free throws. If you shoot a free throw and even tired, it didn't matter, because the whole game could fall on your free throw and it affects the whole team. So what would happen is you would be so tired of running suicides that you would muster up all of your concentration, all of your fundamentals to get that ball in that hoop, because it wasn't just you running those suicides, it was your whole team running those suicides. And your whole team would be standing there literally like dying. And if you took that as a light matter, then you would be on the line running again. And so when I see that, it's like that idea that just because someone pushes you or someone disciplines you, it doesn't mean that they hate you. Because of slavery, and because of the abuse during slavery, and because of the beating during slavery, at the hand of a person that hated you, we shy away from physical discipline. We shy away from hard labor. And we shy away from these things. But the reality is, just because I said in the beginning, just because somebody does something wrong doesn't mean that it's not something that is still necessary. Now, I'm not talking about putting the whip to your child's back. I'm not talking about beating your children with objects, because that's detestable. It's not what that means. But it means it has something to do with constructive, controlled discipline. Okay? So in sports, back to that, when a coach never pushed a child or a player that they knew had no potential. It never happened. You would just ride the bench, and then when we were up by 100 points, you could get in and play. But the star player, or your captain, or whoever, was pushed. I remember going to practice on days when I get there and I'd be like, where's everybody else? Oh no, this is just for you. Last game, you were like really like laying up on your left hand, and you like blah, blah, blah. So today is left hand day. And I'd be like, no, it's Saturday. It's my Saturday. No, it's left hand day. And that's how you know somebody cares. So the fact that somebody is riding you and pushing you, and if there are young adults watching, or children, or whoever, the fact that somebody's pushing you or riding you is because they care. We're not dealing with people that hate us. We're dealing with people that love us. When our parents and those around us push us, it's because they love us and they see the potential in us. Okay? Make a difference? Okay, so Yahuwah is saying, the reason why I correct you is because I love you. All the other nations, I'm not worrying about them. And so when you look around, even as parents, and you see other children and how other people raise their children and what they do, and you get in these social groups and you begin to digress or on how you are raising your children, look at what's happening in the cultures of those people. European people per capita perpetuate dishonor of their parents. They talk to their parents a certain way. They harbor enmity for their parents. They grow up and it's like, I hate my mom so much because she never... Those are things that are a dysfunction within their culture. When you look around, they put their parents in nursing homes. They do all the things contrary to our culture. And so when trying to raise and walk in Torah when it comes to our children, we cannot look at their ways. I've been through school. I know what they teach. I literally was like, oh, I've definitely been in a child abuse situation my whole life based upon your standard. Because that's how they have us feeling about what's necessary for us. But then in the same respect, they will turn around and then discipline your children. They will put your children in correctional facilities and make money off of them. They will then put your children to hard labor, because that's what happens in prison. And they will then do all those things, which makes them then the authority, and then puts your children back in the hand of their oppressor when we don't discipline our children. Okay? Next one is kashar, and it means to prepare, to connect properly, being skillful, bonding, act right, in line, prosperity, or success. So another, what the function then of chastise is to prepare the child and to connect them properly to these things. Growing up, me and my mom, I have other siblings, and I remember my mom would leave me to watch them, and they didn't listen. And she's like, see, if those are my siblings, I would make them listen. I was like, Mom, if they won't listen to me, if they won't listen to you, if they not listening, at that time I would say God, who are they going to listen to? And the reality is, us as Hebrew parents, we are our child's first encounter with Yah. I want you to let that sink in. How we live, how we love them, how we correct them, gives our child their first encounter with Yah. And just thinking about that and letting that sit in, literally my brain just went directly to when we raise our children in paganism. I read an article when Jay was a baby, and this was before I even really fully grasped a lot of stuff. I mean, we knew the information, but really fully grasping it. And I remember, maybe I was pregnant with Jade, or maybe it was before, but it was around the time when I was really consciously thinking about having children. And I read an article about a man who said he does not believe in the Bible because his parents taught him Christmas. And I was like, at the time as a Christian, I'm like, how you don't believe in the Bible because of Christmas? And he started running all these parallels between the lies and the falsehoods that were given to him about Santa Claus, and how they line up with how he and his brain as a child connected them to God. So he was like, okay, so when I do good, God should give me things. And even when I don't do good, it should just be a threat, and then he's still going to do what he's going to do anyways. He ran through all these scenarios. And so what happened is, because of poor parenting, and he was a European too, and because of poor discipline, he did not connect properly with his Creator. The laws, statutes, and commandments that we teach our children, starting with their basis being in the 10 Commandments, teach our children how to properly connect with their Creator, starting with number 1. As a parent, right, those things that Yah instituted in the 10 Commandments should be taught to our children. So not having any other L's before him. But if you break the first commandment in raising your children, then you prevent the child from connecting properly with their Creator. If you don't keep the Shabbat, if you make graven images, if you take Yah's name in vain, and I'm going out of order, I should have did them in order. If you covet, if you commit adultery, if you are doing any of those things, if you're not honoring your parents, if you are murdering, difference between murder and kill, if you're a murderer, you have then disconnected and disallowed the chance for the child to properly connect with the Creator. Okay? Chastisement and correction allows the child to flourish and to develop, or to bond. Chastisement is supposed to bond the child to you. I have never spanked my children or chastised them or corrected them, whether it was physical or non-physical, and my child turned around and say, Mom, I hate you. Now, part of that is because I really, 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 really practice not disciplining my children in anger. And there's a difference between being upset with the behavior and being angry with a child. Anger is a passed down, most of the time learned behavior that's attached to discipline, where now you are actually mad and want to inflict and cause undue pain on a child because of how you feel. And it's something that stirred up in you, right? The difference between being upset with or even disappointed, because there are times where, like, okay, if I'm about to pick something small, if I'm in a store and my kids are pretty well behaved in public, and something happens and you do something that dishonors me, like, my kids don't steal, I'm trying to pick something, but say they did, say they took something out of a store. For me, that would hurt me, because you know better. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to wait until I no longer feel like that to discipline you. No, my feelings are hurt because you took something and you broke a commandment, and there will be swift judgment for that. You do not take anything. There's a difference between that and I've let myself get so angry to now I want to punch my kid, or I want to choke my kid, or I want to slap my kid. Like, that is too far. You've allowed yourself to go and to get too far when it comes to your discipline, because that's not proper discipline. I tell people all the time, the only whoopings I remember growing up, and if you're European on here and you're listening, whoopings is like spankings. We say whoopings. The only spankings, physical corporal punishment, that I remember are the ones that I felt like I didn't deserve. Whether I was being chastised, I was being over chastised, or I literally didn't do it. And I can only literally remember like 5 of those, and I remember them very vividly. But I know I got much more whoopings than I'm way more whoopings than 5. But I know that whatever those spankings were drove some kind of behavior out of me as a child, and I don't even have a remembrance of those of that chastisement. Same for your children. It does hurt to discipline your child. If you are a functional minded parent, no parent wants to discipline their child. It's just like, I would much rather, I tell my kids all the time, I would much rather you behave properly and I can give you whatever you ask me for. And believe it or not, that is the same way that the Father feels about us. He would much rather that we just obeyed his statutes and commandments and we lived in his blessings than for him to have to always withhold, chastise, firm hand, captivity, exile, punishment, nations. It's like a drag. You waste so much time that we could have had spending together, bonding, me actually preparing you and skilling you and spending time instructing you, and it's all gone because you don't want to act right. In education, they teach you this thing called, you learn about classroom management. And the purpose of classroom management is so that there is an environment that's conducive to learning. It's an environment that has rules and structure so that you can give the child or the children whatever is best for them, whatever they need, whatever instruction they need. And so it's necessary to have all children in line. There has to be a firm disciplinary structure set up, because obviously you can't corporally punish other people's kids, but there has to be consequences to behaviors so that there is an environment where everybody can receive the best education and the benefits of having a teacher. The same is true not only in homeschool, but it's also true in parenting. The environment, your home, should be an environment that is conducive to passing down and to implementing and to applying the principles of Torah. If the home is not functional to where the principles of Torah cannot be properly applied because of distractions, whether it's spouse to spouse, whether it's single mom to absentee parent, whether it's your attitude and the children picking up attitude, we have to think of the environment that we prepare and provide for our children as we're trying to teach them Torah. Because it doesn't matter if you are the best teacher. You can be the best teacher and nobody will ever learn from you if your classroom management is terrible. Likewise, you can be the best parent, right? And you can have all the best capabilities and have all the potential and all the things necessary to give to your child. But if you do not have a system set in place that is conducive and that allows for those children to be properly educated in Torah and be able to live it and apply it, then you're wasting your time. You really, really are. Because if they don't get it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if those children don't get it. Okay. The verse for this one is Proverbs 68:6. Elohim settleth the solitary in families. He bringeth out those which are bound with chains, but the rebellious dwell in a dry land. So in chastisement, it is a separation. It separates those who want to follow and obey and walk in this family and those who do not. Like I joke. I mean, you can't kick a child out of your family, but I joke with my kids all the time. Do you want to be in this family? Because in this family, we don't treat each other like this. And in this family, in XYZ, and we run it down. Okay, let me move a little bit further. Another word for discipline is to be strong. And it's like kahak. And it literally means it's power, and it's a strong right hand, but it also means to not falter on your discipline. Sometimes when we're disciplining our children, like I said earlier, it also affects us. And so it's like, now I can't do things, and I can't do this, and I can't experience this, and I can't. So sometimes the discipline also does affect us. Like, I can't bless you. I can't do this, because if I do this, then you somehow benefit from it. Children are tough. And they learn how to resist discipline. And as whether it's physical or circumstantial discipline, they learn how to resist it. And whenever you let up and don't complete what you said, or really make yourself to be a liar in sometimes, then they know how long or how far they can go. Moms, we experience this much more than dads experience this. What normally happens is we talk a lot. We're like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. If you do that, I'm gonna do that, and do that. And so the kid knows, they know how many times you will say something before you actually do what you're supposed to do. As a people, we have to stop that, because there's a price on our heads as a people, and we need to be able to function, operate in this world as it continues to decay and get worse, especially as we move into Jacob's trouble. Well, not that we're not in it, we're in the birthing pain of it, but in the full-fledged, we're like, literally, we need to get it right now. And that is, when I tell you to do something, you need to do it the first time. Whenever I talk to my little nieces and nephews or children that are around me, I always start there. I watch them. I say, okay, I need you to obey your parents when they say it the first time, because I was raised that could be life or death. Now, I was raised a little more hood, so it was probably really life or death. Mom was like, if I tell you to duck and get down, you need to duck and get down. It's no question. It's not like, what'd you say? So you'll be dead. It's that simple. Well, we're moving into a time now where slight disobedience or even delayed disobedience can literally cost you your life. And the scripture, the one verse, the only verse, it says the one verse that comes with the promise is, if you obey your parents, you will live long. But if you don't, your life will be short. Why? Because the parent's job is to connect the child properly to his creator. If you do not get raised under proper Torah instruction, then you will be put into a place where now you're in the hands of the Father. And not that it's always death, but if you don't understand discipline, if you have not been properly disciplined, and then you enter into covenant with the Father, and he begins to require things of you and you don't do them, or you like, well, I did it, but my heart, I wasn't really happy about it. You're going to see this correction come. And my husband and I, we talk about this when it's with our children. I become, lax, and he's like, just remember, it's always easier to bend a young sapling. It's like a young tree. You see them when they have the pole propped up next to them, than it is to bend a strong oak. Because once the sapling, while the sapling is still small, you can make sure that it grows straight. But once the tree has put roots into the ground and begin to grow crooked and it's now strong, you will sometimes have to destroy the whole tree because of what it'll do to the house. We had a tree in front of our house. The tree began to lean over the house. And the tree had to come down, because then the tree was going to fall and crush the whole house. Sometimes we're in a position where we can see the slight behavior, but then the time and effort it takes to actually correct it is something that we don't want to put in. And we run the risk then of raising children that literally destroy the whole house. I know we don't see it like this, but when you grow up, and maybe some of the older women can attest to this, and you don't raise your children as strict or as properly as you should have, then for the rest of your life, you are dealing with the issues of these children, the women that they marry, and then how they raise their children, and then they're always in jail, and they always need money, and they always need this, because we perpetuated a curse in the generations who were not raised in Torah, like people my age and whatnot, where they perpetuated the curses of walking in lawlessness. And what happens though is if you did put enough good in, what should happen is the child should then begin to walk in that way, because somehow, in even not knowing for some of us Torah, we understood the idea of properly applying the things that maybe we learned and we raised our kids correctly. Okay, the next one, and you can go through the rest of these kind of on your own, so I don't want to keep you too long, but it's on, you can get the book on Amazon, and you can also download a digital copy, and I think it's like half the price. It's like $7 on herroyalroots.com, and then the book's on there in a digital form. Okay, I'm going to give you another one, and it's Yasar, Yod Shen Resh. It means to straighten, faithful to duty, tightly secure, navel cord, and then loosen the cord. And that's kind of where I'm going to end. The idea is to be bound to the child and to instruct them. But then at some point that is so important, because what is expected, back to my whole Shabbat story, what is expected is that they begin to carry out what we're implementing. So back to my Shabbat story, which is to instruct and then to allow them to carry out in the way that that which we've instructed them in. So today I upped it. Before it was like, they can get it pretty clean when it comes to their room and different stuff and preparing. And today the expectation was, not only are you now going to clean up, but now you're going to do it, and do it with your capability and excellence. And as we're instructing our children, we have to constantly push them. Because if we don't push them, and if we don't instruct them in basic principles that they can understand, they'll never be able to apply Torah. Torah is not a religion. It is a guideline for a lifestyle that then pleases the Father, perpetuates functionality, and in the end bears fruit. So everything that we do as a people is governed by Torah, which is instruction. Torah is instruction. And so when we do things, everything that we do should be showing or instructing the world on what's popular, and at the same time we should be living Torah and instructing our children on in what's in what is practical and that which will bear fruit. That is so important. And so there'll be more blurbs like this. I'm not going to keep you too long because I can go on and on and on. But really what we need to focus on is that element of discipline. If there are not proper instruction, if there's not proper rules, if there is not balance in how these children are reared with structure, then you cannot properly apply Torah. I know a lot of us are stay-at-home moms, or we're homeschooling, and we're doing, different things. But just because your children are not in a westernized system and are not receiving westernized structure, because we've rejected that as the standard, we need to make them twice as good when it comes to their ability to obey and follow instructions in Torah. So for parents who are home, we need to get our structure together. And I'm talking not only to other people, but first to myself, as always, because there is a tendency, because you are home, to then lack on structure. And when you lack in structure or management of your home, then it makes the job of being a parent, and obviously a homeschooling mom, much, 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 much more difficult. it should be done with joy. But when there is a lack of structure, it makes it difficult. It makes it very, very difficult. And so this week when we get back into school, I will come back on and put like some like homeschooling moments of a couple of things that I'm doing at home. And I'll even leave like some moments of correction, not like physical correction, because that's dumb. I'm not ignorant, but I mean like of how to redirect. And I have small children, and so I understand how it is with keeping small children on task. And I'll also show you how tough you can be on small children and how much they can actually accomplish when they are pushed and loved at the same time. Like it's amazing to see it. And knowing the potential and knowing the type of child that you have is so important. So when you are disciplining, the discipline is not the same for every child. It's not the same for every child. And that needs to be taken in consideration. So being frustrated with one child because they're not like another child is something we have to stop doing as a people as well. Because my first child, she cried a lot, but she's very, 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 she's very obedient. My youngest is a fireball. And I had to stop having the same expectations, not for her obedience, but for her personality. And thinking that a conversation or a gentle reminder or telling how I was disappointed was going to correct her behavior, because it's different for every child. And so we have to begin to assess that. And when we look in scripture and we look in Torah and the Tanakh and just all of scripture, we can see how instruction can be properly applied based upon the personality and the setting. Like Babylonian captivity, where he said, go here, build houses, have babies, do X, Y, and Z, was completely different from this captivity, where it was like strong taskmasters and all of these things. So it's something to like really, really take into consideration. And I won't keep you this long, but this has been something that's really been on my mind, because as a nation, we really, really have to, part of how our children, and I'll say this again, how our children connect with their Heavenly Father is based upon our example. It's really, 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 really true. Like, do they expect to be disciplined? Do they expect to be corrected by Yah? Do they expect for Him to put pressure on them to draw out the fruit? Or do they expect everything to be easy? Are we doing everything for our children? Are we making things too easy? Because it's not realistic, and it's not realistic based upon Torah. And are we expecting perfect obedience? That is something that I think is something maybe we can all focus on. And I'm definitely going to move into this Shabbat and into the rest of my week, focusing on what perfect obedience is. And perfect obedience doesn't mean perfection. Perfect obedience means to do it to the best of your ability and to have a heart that is open to correction. Because that is the issue. It's not that we don't want to do right. It's that we don't want the correction. And correction is part of the process that allows us to do right. How we learn that we are doing wrong and how we fix it. And to fix it with a heart of joy. And to be thankful that somebody cared enough to correct us and to tell us the right way to do it. The beauty and the blessing of Torah is that the Most High did not hide His expectation of us from us. He put it before us and was very, very strict on what He expected, but He was also very, very, very kind in how He was going to to bless that obedience. So with obedience does come reward. You do reward your children. You do afford them the blessings of obedience as well. And so maybe next time we'll look into how to do that. But we have to understand that how we connect with our individual community and with our families and with our parents and then the parents to the children is how they will then later connect with Yah. Okay? I hope that helped somebody. I know it definitely helped me. It really, really helped me to just put that out there and get that off my chest. And also, parents, parents are open. Like, we should be open. to what works for other people. And so, like, we have to get a little bit off of that whole, like, I can't, I can't take something from somebody else. Like, these are my kids, I'm going to raise them how I want to. That is an individualistic mindset that does not exist in Torah. Because your children will affect my children. Your children's obedience and how you raise your children will affect my children's not only condition in captivity, but also their ability to get out of captivity. So the reason why I feel compelled to say something or to even talk about this style of parenting is because, like I said, one monkey does stop the show. So if your kid is acting a monkey, then guess what? It's going to stop the show for everybody else, because we move as one. We have to be ahad. And so that's why the function of other people, and myself included, and why I do make these videos, because when I make a video like this, I put myself in a position to not only come under the microscope on how I'm implementing these things, but to also be checked by somebody if they don't see me doing it. And so that's where it's really, really important. And lastly, and I'm gonna get out your way, stop thinking your kids are good. Some of you people, because they're not. I know people who are like, oh, they're good for me. And I've been around people's kids. I've been around kids who are good. And I'm not talking about good, like good, but functional. And I've been around people who think their kids are good and think that they are good disciplinarians, and their kids are out of control. And so really, really take that into consideration, because I have, like, I require my children to not only to be obedient to me, but within limits, other adults, because I don't ever want my child to think that an adult can take advantage of them because you're an adult and they should be obedient. But I do instruct my children on when somebody tells my kid to do something, if it's not something that violates X, Y, and Z, and that, you know what I mean, then you need to do it. Because if I find out that you haven't, there is no discussion for it, because I don't like somebody to have to say something to my kid in the first place. So if you have to, I'm not going to be mad at you. I'll be mad at them, because you've done what was right. Hey, you're doing too much. Oh, okay. So somebody to tell you that you were X, Y, and Z. Okay. Noted. And it doesn't take anything away from me as a parent, but it allows me to see where I can tighten up as a parent. So, yeah, we have to teach our kids how to operate in respect to us, but also in respect to the community. Okay, I gotta get some juice and some wine for Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom to all of my families out there who are entering into the Most High's rest as He has commanded. And I really, 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 really hope that this was in some way beneficial. I don't even know why it took that long for me to even, make the video, and why I made such a long video, but I know for some people it is something that's necessary, and I look forward to sharing with you some of the things that are implemented within our classroom, and also those things that are probably even implemented in our home. So for those of you who don't, I have a glass of wine on Shabbat? Yeah, I do. For those of you, how I'll do these discussions, because I don't want to leave a lot of this stuff just like on the YouTube channel, but what I'm going to do is I have a Periscope. So if you have Periscope, please sign on to the Periscope so that we can have these discussions and they can be up, because I know some people, these are very casual, and I don't know how much people want to see or don't want to see, but Periscope makes it easier for me to kind of be less under all the trolls and the other stuff that is a part of being in face and going on YouTube. Okay, so yeah, as a trolls. So yeah, all right, Shabbat Shalom.